Hello students, are you preparing for NEET, JEE or KCET? Looking for the right guidance to achieve your dream rank? Welcome to Global Academy live coaching classes, single point and complete solution for competitive exam preparation. Specially designed for 11th and 12th or PUC 1 and 2 students, combining board syllabus with entrance exam coaching. New batches starting from 25th March 2026 for the academic year 2026-27. Course fees 9,999. Now, with 50% discount, enroll for just 4,999 for the entire course. Limited seats available. Enroll today. For any enquiry, call to these numbers, scan QR code for easy payment. Hi students, my name is Poornima and I'm your biology educator. So in this class, I'm going to explain or I'm going to teach you about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants. This is the first unit of your PUC 2, that is the second PUC. It is an important unit for your NEET, KCET also. So students, let us understand the heading first. What does it is speaking about? It is speaking about the reproduction of what? Of the flowering plants. So, we are studying the reproduction in flowering plants. Of which method? Of sexually method. How does the flower is going to reproduce sexually? As the word comes sexual reproduction, we must understand that we must study about the male reproductive organ as well as the female reproductive organ of the flower. Since flower is the most attractive part of the angiosperm, and this angiosperm will be covering our environment majorly. So, all the angiosperms are going to reproduce in a flower by sexual method in the most of the cases. So, in this class, I am going to cover the topics such as flower, a fascinating organ of angiosperm, pre-fertilizations, structure and its event, microsporogenesis, megasporogenesis and pollination. See, as a word suggesting fascinating, what does the word fascinating means? How does the flower is an attractive? Can you say some points how does the flower will be an attractive? See, when you look at the flower, what do you feel? You feel wow, how nice it is. Because of why? Because of its color. When you smell the flower, you feel attractive. How? By its smell. Sometimes you taste the nectar or sometimes you taste some of the parts of the flower and it will be sweet. What does that? It is a nectar, that is a sweet secreting organ. So these are all the some of the adaptation that the flower is having. So how does this adaptation will help for its pollination? See, as a human beings, we will be attracted. Why not the animals and the living organism will not attract? Obviously, they of course they attract 100% to this kind of adaptation of the flower. So we can call the flower as a fascinating organ. See, the flower consists of calyx, corolla and rachim, gynoecium. So what are those? So these are the parts of the flower. To study the sexual reproduction, we must know the parts of the flower in priorly. So the flower consists of calyx, corolla and rachim and gynoecium. See, calyx you can call it as the sepal. Okay. Corolla will be the petals, that is the colorful part. And rachim you can call it as the stamen. And gynoecium will be the carpel, that is the female part. Androecium will be the male part of the flower and gynoecium will be the female part of the flower. So flowers, not only morphologically but embryological adaptation for the pollination is also very much important. See, with the help of these few colorful diagrams, I am going to cover a major portion of this unit. Let us study or let us start with the parts of the flower. This will be called as the stalk, okay? And the enlarged dome-shaped portion, you can call it as the thalamus. The green small leaf-like structure is called as sepals. What did I said you priorly what it is also called as. It is also called as calyx. Please don't get confusion between the calyx and the corolla, right? Next, the colorful portion of the flower is called as the corolla or the petals. Then this entire structure of the male portion is called as the stamen, whereas this entire portion of the female, it is called as the carpel. Okay. See, now let us study. In this particular slide, I am going to explain only about the male part of the flower. See, the stamen consists of two parts. What are those? The stamen consists of filament. The long stalk-like structure that is holding the anther is called as filament, and the bilobed structure or the upper portion of the stamen is called as anther. So always remember, the stamen is made up of two different parts, that is filament as well as the anther. When we take the TS of the anther, what is the TS? The transverse section. When we take with the TS of the anther, we will understand that anther is a bilobed and each lobe consists of dithecus. What does the word bilobe and dithecus is saying about? See, this entire is a one lobe. Okay, this one more is the other lobe. So, the each anther consists of how many lobes? There are nearly 2 lobes are there. So, it is called as bilobed structure. And inside the each lobe, how many theca are present? There are 2 theca cavities are present. So, the each anther is a bilobed and each lobe consists of 2 theca. So, let us study about how the pollen grains are produced, and this production of the pollen grains or the production of the microspore is called as microsporogenesis. So, when we study this in the detail, we can understand that. See, I am drawing here only the each lobe in order to understand for you. Okay. The each lobe consists of the outermost layer, that is called as outer epidermis is present, right? This is our outer epidermal cells. These are the outer epidermis. Later on, the outer epidermis will be followed by endothecium. This will be followed by and barrel shaped cell called as endothecium. Later on, there will be a layer that is called as the middle layers will be present. There are some of the middle layers, right? Next, it will be followed by tapetum. Okay, and later on, at the center, we can see the spores. Let us label this so that it will be understood clearly. The first layer you can call it as the epidermis. The each lobe consists of different layers. Each lobe of the anther is made up of different lobes. So you can term it as the layers of the different layers of the anthers. So the outermost will be the epidermis. This layer you can call it as endothecium. Next, this is the middle layer. Later on, this layer you can call it as tapetum. And this layer is the microspore tetrad. Okay. So, each lobe, after taking the section of the anther, we got to know what? There are bilobed and dithecus is present. So, let us study the each lobe, like one lobe in detail. So, the anther consists of 4 different protective layers. Which are those? Those are epidermis, endothecium, middle layer, tapetum. So, what is the function of the epidermis? Epidermis is the outermost layer of the anther that is mainly involved in the protection purpose. Then come to the endothecium. Endothecium is a barrel shaped cell that is having some tangential fibers in it. There are some fibers inside the endothecium which is hygroscopic in nature. During the time of the dispersal of the pollen tetrad, the endothecium will absorb the water and that leads to the breakdown of the anther wall. Later on, there are several middle layers are present. They are meristematic in nature as well as it is made up of parenchyma cell that is help for the dividing of the cells also. Later on, it is followed by the tapetum, that is a nourishment cell, means it is providing the nutrition for the young pollen grains to develop. Okay, next, see how does the pollen tetrad, I have used here word pollen tetrad. What does the word tetrad means? Tetrad means 4. So what does it indicate? There are 4 microspore are present. See, inside this there is microspore mother cell. This is a 1 microspore mother cell which is 2n in condition. Microspore mother cell undergo what? Microspore mother cell undergo meiosis. Later on, each meiosis, we know the meiosis is going to give the division of the 4 haploid cell. The 4 haploid cells are produced and this is what I have mentioned here, microspore tetrad. See, each of the pollen grains after developing the microspore tetrad, it will have its own development. That is, the pollen grain will be developed further like this. That is, outermost layer you can call it as the exine. See, the outermost decorative layer is called as the exine and that is the hard covering of the pollen grain, and the innermost layer is called as the, like this, innermost layer will be the exine layer. See, here and there somewhere the exine layer will be also absent. The exine layer will be completely absent and this particular portion we can call it as the germ pore. Okay, what does this germ pore indicate? See, I will give you a small example. We will build a house, right? But when there is no door at all, when there is no opening for the house at all, what will happen? Whatever the inside one we are present or we are living, obviously we will go to suffer it, right? That is what the happens in pollen grain also. Entire exine is a hard covering. It is made up of the material that is called as the sporopollenin. So what will happen when the entire and pollen grain, it is surrounded by the exine only, it will make the it will make the pollen grain what not to develop, or it will make the pollen grain in die there itself. So the germination, in order to germination of the pollen grain, the germ pore is required. And intine is a thin layer. It is made up of cellulose as well as the pectin layer. It is made up of what content? It is made up of cellulose as well as the pectin layer. Each of the pollen grain, it is made up, it is having the division, unequal division, that is a smaller cell as well as the larger cell division will be present. Smaller cell you can call it as the generative cell. Okay, smaller cell we will call it as the generative cell and the larger cell you can call it as the vegetative cell. The generative cell will further undergo division, or it further undergo mitosis division, and it produces the 2 male gametes will be produced like this. It will divide further and it will produces the 2 male gametes. Later on, this particular stage, how does the cell will look like? The cell is going to look like this now. So this particular anther we can call it as 3-celled stage male gametophyte. So what have you learnt in this particular slide about the filament or about the anther? Anther consists of the 2, that is the structure that is called as the filament as well as the anther. Then the anther, when it is sectioned, you will observe the bilobe as well as dithecus, it will be present. And when we study about the individual lobe, what we will get to know, there are different protective layers are present. Later on, the microspore mother cell will undergo meiosis and it is going to produce the tetrad spore, right? Each of the tetrad spore will undergo development, that is the development of the layers, exine and intine layer. inside there will be a nuclear division, unequal nuclear division, that is the production of the larger cell and the smaller cell. The larger cell you can call it as the vegetative cell, and the smaller cell you can call it as the generative cell. The generative cell undergoes further again division and it produces the two male gametes. So now this entire structure of the pollen grain, each pollen grain you can call it as three celled stage. So now let us study about the female structure also, that is the female reproductive structure. The female reproductive part, here see there are different parts in the female. The uppermost portion you can call it as the stigma, that is the seating portion for the pollen grain, whereas the elongated structure is called as style, and the entire structure you can call it as the ovary. Then there is a small structure that is called as ovule, which is the necessary structure of the female reproductive structure. The ovule is held to the ovary with the help of the placenta. So let us study the female gametophyte in detail. This is the female gametophyte. How does it actually looks like? The female gametophyte, it consists of different parts. Here also the funicule, it is the stalk of the female gametophyte. Then the hilum, that is slightly upper to the funicle. There are the different integuments, that will be the outer integument as well as the inner integument. There is a nutritive structure or the nutritive layer that is called as the nucellus, and the innermost there is a egg that you can, at the beginning we will call it as the megaspore mother cell. The megaspore mother cell undergo meiosis, right? It undergo meiosis and it produces the four cell. You can see here it has produced the four cells are present, right? Among this four cell, the three will be degenerated, right? Degenerated means it will be destroyed or it will be going to die. Only one will be living in condition, and this cell undergoes the mitosis, that is the mitosis 1, and then it produces 2 cell. It undergo again mitosis 2 and it produces 3 cell. Again it undergo the mitosis 3 and produces the 8 celled structure. Like this, the embryo sac is made up of 8 celled. However, the male reproductive structure was made up of 3 celled structure, but the female reproductive structure, its embryo sac, is made up of 8 celled structure. So let us study how it is divided. See, at the uppermost of the egg, there are 3 cells, and the lowermost there are 3 cells, and in between there is a presence of the 2 cells. So can you count here? 3, and here 3, and the middle 2. What does the total is? 8. So at the chalazial pole, see there are two different region here, the chalaza as well as the micropole. So what does here word micropyle and the chalaza means? The word micropyle indicates that it is the opening of the female gametophyte from which the anther is going to penetrate the female embryo sac. So wherever the micropyle region is present, the micropyle will have the what? Will have the 3 cells will be present, and this 3 cell you can call it as the synergids. And among this the synergid, the 2 synergid is going to degenerate, whereas only one will be persistent. Later on, there is a polar nuclei, a set of nuclei will be present, and thereby the 3 cells will be of the antipodals, that is facing towards the chalazial pole. Later on, what happens, as the anther which is having the 2 gametes, the stamen that is having the 2 gametes, as it enters, it first reaches to the it first reaches to the egg, and thereby it produces the zygote, because the egg consists of how much nucleus? N plus the male nuclei, it produces the 2n, and this 2n is going to produce the zygote, whereas the N, it fuses with the 2 of the polar nuclei, and it produces the nucleus condition, that is 3N, and thereby it produces the endospore. Based on this only we can study in the further, that is the dicot embryo, how does the monocot embryo is going to be formed.